Hello, everybody, man. Oh, man, I'm so excited. I got a lady on the channel that she gonna turn it out. Oh, my God. She got some stories of her town that I know you don't know it because it's like a little small town in a little small state where I'm going to be honest with you, it ain't many black folk. But there's some good history in her area, and she gonna tell a story on strong inspiration. You know, I'm Anthony Brogdon. I'm the one. I tell you the truth. I do my best to find these unusual stories, and then I try to come up with some intelligent questions and let them roll with it. And so that's what we're about to do. After I ask you a few things, I want you to subscribe to the channel. It's free. Just hit the subscribe button. It helped me get my numbers so that I see who's watching me. I want you to like this video because I know you don't know what she's gonna talk about. I know you don't know these facts. And you're gonna be so impressed, she's gonna give it to you so eloquently that you're gonna have to like this video. I want you to hit that notifications bell so when the videos come up, and as you notice, I'm doing 4 or 5 a week, you get a bing on your computer or something that, hey, it's a new video on strong inspiration. It's time to get some more education. And then I want you to tell somebody about the channel. Don't keep this to yourself so you can act like you know everything. Share it. Get a bag of popcorn. They're not that long. And watch it with your kids, with them elders, and then y'all discuss what you watch. All right? Do that for me. The other thing that I want you to do, as you know, is I'm a filmmaker. I'm serious about my game on this history. So I did the documentary, Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America. Slaves who went to college, and I named names. Slaves who owned businesses, and I name names. Black-owned businesses from the 1800s to the 1960s, and I name names. It's all in this movie. I really implore you to watch my film, and it's streaming on Amazon. It's called Business in the Black. And then I wrote the book titled Black Business Book. Now, the film has some interviews. I think about 16, 17 interviews with people whose family owned the business in the early 1900s. The book don't have that, but it's got more facts. It's over 200 facts in my book, and it's an easy read. You know, all I do is, if you can see that, my friends, is I just give you maybe 4 or 5 paragraph sentences, a paragraph or two, to explain the fact. Let the fact stand on its own merit. And that's what I do in my book. There's over 200 of them, similar to the movie, but much more thorough and comprehensive. This book going down in history. I'm telling you, watch it. I keep doing this and keep promoting it. It's taking off. Already has. And it's also available on Amazon, but you can go to my website, businessintheblack.net. Go there and order my book. It's very, very reasonable. And you get a copy, I'll autograph it. My writing is a little shaky, but still, you'll know it's from me because it's shaky on everybody's book. And let me tell you something. The lady, she's smiling. She said, I'm ready to go. I said, hold on one more second before I let you go and we blow some minds. Y'all know I use that word strong a lot. Strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And I love it. I use it on everything. And that's my intro to the guest on today's show. She's a strong lady, I'm sure. She's a strong lady for doing what she's doing. So let me have her introduce herself. We about to get it on right now. Go ahead, sister.
All right, thank you. And thanks everyone for tuning in and listening to our story. My name is Carmen James. I live in a little town called Mount Holly Springs, Pennsylvania. It's in Cumberland County, Pennsylvania, located in the center of Pennsylvania, about 2.5 hours from Philadelphia and about 3.25 hours from Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Our population is a little over 2,000. It was in 2017, and it's probably about the same with the most recent 2020 census.
Let me stop you right there. Let me ask you a couple personal questions. How you get to this town? Is that where you grew up?
Yeah, we moved here when I was 2 years old. The closest town from Mount Holly Springs is a town where my father was born, Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And that's for people with history. There's an Army War College there that was very busy during the 1960s. As far as history goes, Jim Thorpe went to the Indian school that was located in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. So my
The
dad
Indian
was
school.
born
What does
there.
that mean?
It's where children were taken from their parents and sent to the school to become Americans, or what the perception of what America was at that time. So,
Oh, okay. Now,
and so
you know everybody in town. Everybody know you.
just about, yeah.
Yeah, 2,000 people. Yeah, y'all all friends, and that's
Yeah.
one big picnic, and that's everybody.
It's changed it a little. There are a lot of rental properties now, but the people that have lived here all their lives know everybody, knows everybody. And people that had moved away, like myself, I had lived in Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia suburbs for over 30 years
Oh,
and
I
worked
got you.
there. You left the small town to go to bigger cities so you can earn more money.
Yeah.
And in essence, that's what happened with the church that I'm going to talk to you about.
Okay.
It was a thriving community, especially it was filled. Mount Holly Springs had in the 1800s a population of free African Americans, and after the Civil
Three. That's
War,
1, 2, 3.
free,
Oh, three.
FREE,
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you
free.
said 3.
It's
Okay.
my Pennsylvania accent. Free African
I got
Americans,
you.
and there at one time there was a population on this mountain in Cedar Street, which was two streets that intersect of 100 African Americans.
Okay, before you go
Now,
there, I got another question on you. How you know this? I mean, are you a historian, or
no,
you run the museum there? How you
no.
know what these stories?
Well, we always knew the story that I'm going to talk about. I went to the church. And so the founder of the church had 6 children. One of his children was like a grandmother to me. And you would sit on her porch and she would tell you stories of her father, who was enslaved, who fought in the Civil War, who built the church that we all attended, who built the house where she lived. And
Oh,
who built a number of houses because he was a carpenter and a mason.
I got you.
So,
I got
and there's not a lot of documentation. What you have are stories, people who tell stories from one generation to the next. So we would
Okay.
just sit on the front porch as kids and just listen to the story, of the stories that she would tell us about the neighborhood.
Okay, let me
And
stop you there. Let me stop you there. Now, we're gonna get to that story, but I want to ask you this: Philadelphia and Pennsylvania had slaves,
yes,
but then there was some free territory in Pennsylvania too, because a lot of slaves escaped to get to Pennsylvania. Where's that defined line? Do you know where it was kind of free and where it wasn't free, or
no.
how did that work?
No, I can only tell you that on Mountain Street and Cedar Street and a few other homes or residents in Mount Holly had free African Americans, and I don't know if it's because they were born from free parents. I can't tell
got
you
you.
that. I can tell you that I will also give you a little history. The town that's right next to Mount Holly Springs is called Boiling Springs. We've got a lot of springs around here. And
Okay.
that has documentation, even though we don't. The house that I currently live in, the field next door to me is Boiling Springs. They have documentation that the Underground Railroad went through there because there was a farmer that was arrested and fined $5,000,
Wow.
which was a lot of money back then,
Heck yeah.
and stopped the underground in Boiling Springs. Do I think that there was people coming through Mount Holly? Yes, but we don't have any
Yeah, I
documentation.
got you. Okay, now had you heard of the story of Henry Box Brown?
No,
Henry
no.
Box Brown mailed himself to freedom in a box.
In a box. Yes. Now
Yeah,
okay. I
but he
sort of
mailed
remember.
himself to Philadelphia. And a
Oh,
lot
I
of
did.
places, they once they got to Philadelphia, they were free. Philadelphia was, I guess it was parts of it that had some free areas. And like you said, there was an underground railroad stop.
Mhm.
What? And that's not far from you.
No.
Is that house still standing? That the stop was that gentleman's house you just mentioned?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Have you been? Is it a cave in the basement or something like that? A
Yeah.
tunnel?
I've gone by the house and I've done walking tours by the house. I think it's held it's owned privately, and the people don't let you
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
house.
yeah. When people when they went to the underground and let's say in that town there, they kept going, or could they just stay there and that was it? Do you think
No,
they had to keep going further
they,
north?
they would keep going further north. They would keep going up.
Okay.
I think the goal may have been to Canada, to
Oh,
go as far
really?
as I could.
Now, the gentleman that you're talking about, what's his name? And let's start with the story.
The gentleman that I'm talking about is Elias Van Buren Parker,
Okay.
and he was from Maryland, and he fought in the Civil War. He was enslaved, but he did fight in the Civil War. After the Civil War, this story has that he walked over the South Mountain, because our town is located at the base of a mountain called South Mountain. He
Okay.
walked over the South Mountain with his Aunt Ethel, and they came to Mount Holly Springs because they knew people that lived in Mount Holly Springs. And the story has that Ethel had two sprigs in her apron of lilacs. So we still have those lilacs sparsely. They're not as thick and beautiful as they used to be, but growing up, we always had lilacs. And
Lilac
we always,
is a flower, right?
it's a bush,
A
it's a
bush.
shrub,
Okay.
and
Okay.
and can get pretty leggy and pretty aggressive. And we
Okay.
had this for a long time. But I tell you that because now we use a lot of symbolism. I'm Our group that's taking care of the church and the cemetery is called the Mt Tabor Preservation Project group. And
Okay.
our goal is to make sure that it's restored, preserved, and maintained even after all of this, because you don't want to get the grants and do all the work and pull in all the favors and then fix it and then not have a goal for
Oh,
how you're going to
sure, sure,
maintain it,
sure.
and make sure that it's recognized, because we feel that it's a little piece of history and it needs to be recognized. So far we've been recognized by the Cumberland County Registry of Historic Places. And we've also, in March, we're now in the National Registry of Historic Places, which is
Oh, excellent.
a really big deal for us. We're very proud of that.
Yeah.
And we're also still applying for a state marker, a Pennsylvania state marker. So that's why I go out and talk on programs like yours,
Yes.
or we do
Yes.
tours. The goal is to make people aware of this little piece of history, because to the people that grew up, which I'm one of, and the people that attended the church, and for the descendants of Elias Parker and his wife Lucinda, it's a really big, it's important. It's important that you
Sure.
share this, because the church was started circa 1870. um, the legend has it that Elias Parker is the one that built it, and it was a functioning church. We had a rotating minister that would come in every other week or every third week, because he would rotate to other AME Zion churches. But we had Sunday school every week. So we had that up until 1970, and then the church closed, and it sat abandoned for almost 50 years.
Okay. Now let me
So
ask you. You attended the church at one point, right?
yes, when I started when I was 6.
Yeah. And
I'm 70, 72 now.
is there another church of that faith, or a church? Is that the only kind of church in town for African American people? Let's say.
Yes. Yes, it's the only church, and there's a cemetery that's located about 50 yards away, that people think is part of the church, but it wasn't. It's a cemetery that if you were African American and you were buried in Mount Holly, or wanted to be buried in Mount Holly, that was the cemetery that you were buried in. So we have that cemetery, and we're proud of that cemetery because in there, for a town our size, we have 7 USCT troops that are buried there, 7 United States colored troops buried there that fought in the Civil War. One of which is the gentleman that built the store, that built the church.
Oh man, is it? Are there grave sites, tombstones, or something like that for them?
Well, just like the church was in bad shape, so was the cemetery. So we've been working since 2016 on both locations, and there are 16 headstones remaining. And we just did a project with the Dickinson College, which is in Carlisle. Their Earth Science group did some ground penetrating radar, and they found 44 anomalies or 44 bodies. There are no headstones and we don't know who they are, but they found 44. And last month, we had received grant money from the Cumberland County Historical Society, and we placed solar lights that are flush to the ground so that the lawnmower can go over them. So we have 44 solar lights that glow at night.
Oh, I bet
Where
that's cute.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
my
I bet
mother's
that's cute.
94. She thinks it's a little creepy,
That's what I
but
was gonna say.
but if you go up there and you see these soft glowing lights where
Yeah, that's
nobody,
cute.
there's
Yeah.
nothing for them, because other than, I mean, other than the Gumby family, well, the Parker family, when Elias Parker came to Mount Holly Springs, he married a Johnson. And then one of his daughters married a Gumby. And the Gumby family is still a very strong name, family name in Mount Holly Springs, even though there aren't any living on Mountain Street anymore. But that's where their family is buried. So you have descendants that are still living that come to the cemetery. And we had our last burial in 2006. Lucinda Gumby was buried. So you have that family coming, but that's the only family. And the Gumby and the Foster family are the only families that go to that cemetery. So we are now taking care of the cemetery.
I get you.
The borough of Mount Holly Springs, because there was no owner, even the bishop's office out of Maryland didn't have a record of the church. So they were gracious enough to sell the church once it was established that yes, it was an AME Zion church. And yes, it's been sitting there for 50 years and nobody's been taking care of it. And we were willing to take on that responsibility by writing grants and getting money, but we need to have an owner. We don't have money to afford insurance for a building like that.
Yeah.
So the borough of Mount Holly Springs stepped up and said, we'll take ownership of the church and we'll take ownership of the cemetery. So we've been working with them along with the Cumberland County Historical Society and Preservation PA, which is an organization in Pennsylvania that looks at historic places and sees them as something to save and puts them on an at-risk list so that people just can't come in and dispose of the history. And you're on that list forever. Once they adopt you, you're on forever. And they're a resource that we use because no, I'm not a historian, but I use everything that they have, all of us, all of the volunteers, anybody that's on the Mt Tabor Preservation Project has a skill that they bring that's needed to preserve the church or work at maintaining the church.
Now, how big is the church? Is it like a one room,
it's
small building type thing, or did it have offices in the back, a basement? No. How big is it?
It's a story and a half. It's log on the first story and then stick on the top part. It's pine log and then it's cladded in pine boards, pine cladding. So it is a log cabin. And it's just sitting on the land that it's built on. There's not a lot of extra. In fact, one side of the land is owned by an ancestor of Elias Parker. And we're working to see if perhaps that could be donated as a parking lot, because we want to have, we do have tours, but we want to continue to have formal tours. The church is on a Civil War tour for automobiles and bicycles or motorcycles, cyclists. And so we have people that come and we want to make it official,
I got you. I got you.
make it a place where we talk about the history, and we need, we need to have some kind of income, even though the borough owns it. They're allowing us right now to manage the restoration process, and we're hoping that afterwards, we just signed a MOU, a memorandum of understanding, how we'll work together, because they're the owner, but we write the grants on their behalf.
I
So
got you.
we have over $300,000 in grant money
I got you.
that will be used to
Let me
help.
let me ask you this: when you do a tour, what do you tell people? I mean, you might have given me some of that now, but what do you say? What's the story?
We say that this is the Mount Tabor AME Zion Church. It was built. Legend has that it was built by Elias Parker, who was a former slave and who fought in the Civil War, and who's buried in the cemetery that we're going to visit shortly after we leave the building. And we walk through and talk about the fact that it's always looked the way it does as far as the color, not as far as the rot, because we have holes in the ceiling, we have holes in the floor. And so we also have a series of pictures that show what it looked like when they pried the door open and went in. This building was formerly
What do you mean by they pried the door open?
During the process of rediscovering the church, it was found by there was a program called the Heart and Soul Program.
Okay.
It was a collection of stories in Carlisle and in surrounding areas. And during the course of collecting stories in Mount Holly, somebody said, you guys need to talk to the Gumby sisters, because their family has been here since the 1800s, and they are an influential family, and they've been here. They're part of the Mount Holly history. And so Lindsay Varner and Pam Steele had approached the Gumbys. And of course, there's hesitance, strangers wanting to come to your home and ask stories. So finally, the pharmacist in town, like I said, it's a small town, everybody knows everybody. The pharmacist said to one of the sisters, Harriet, you need to talk to these ladies. They're collecting stories. It's okay to talk to them. So they developed a relationship over a couple visits, and they talked. It was Harriet and her sister Edna, and another sister that was bedridden. Now remember, these were all granddaughters of a Civil War formerly enslaved veteran. So it's hard to believe that their grandfather fought in the Civil War. And so they told the story of their family and told about a legacy that they were concerned about, their grandfathers, and they took them to the back window of their house and said, there's a church over there, and that there's the cemetery where our parents and our grandfathers buried, and we're concerned about that.
I got you.
So doing that, that's how the story developed. That's how the church was rediscovered.
I got you.
And so from those stories, a cleanup day was scheduled, because they went in that day, pried open the door and went into the church, and it was like a castle. Pews were there. The hymnals were still open, laying on the benches. There were the fans that you used to get from the funeral parlor, that would, give the church fans. And the pulpit was there with the chairs and the organ, everything. It was like a time capsule.
Let me ask you this. Was that the name of the church back in the day, or is it a new name?
Nope, that's the name of the church. It started out as Mount Tabor AME, but then it evolved into Zion. It went over to the Zion portion.
I got you.
And I know that there's a big difference. Don't ask me what the difference is, but I know that when I say Zion, some people say, oh, and if I go to Zion, they say, are you Zion? And I'm like, yes. And I know that I have to be Zion because that's how I was raised. So
I got you. Let me ask you this question. How many people could have attended the church? How many people lived in the town, in its heyday, how many African Americans might have been in that area or something?
There weren't a lot. I will tell you that there were probably 4 families. My parents only had 3 kids. Everybody else had like lots of kids. So, and when you went to Sunday school, in order to be a church and I guess be tax exempt, they had to write down your name, and so many people had to attend Sunday school in order to be considered tax-free, I guess, or a legitimate.
Really?
I remember them taking down the names and counting the heads, because you had to have Sunday school every Sunday. As I
Right.
said, church was on a rotating basis.
I got you.
So
Let,
that's
let,
basically. Go
let,
ahead.
let me ask you this question. What is in that town? Is there a big employer or something? What do people do for a living there? I mean, I know
There are
like, there's all the other things, but is there something that substantiates the community?
the two businesses, actually there are three businesses, but the two that were in existence then, it's not with the same owners, but the same type of business.
Yeah.
Because we're at the base of a mountain, we have a lot of forest. Our name is Springs. We have a lot of spring freshwater creeks. We have paper mills, and during the 1800s, there were paper mills. There were ore mines, or ore factories, ORE, the material ore, and there were rug factories, and so that's what brought the industry. But as time went by, those industries diminished and people moved away to other jobs, just like I went to Philadelphia for another job and to go to school.
Sure.
But also, what was the end of, say, Mount Tabor, Carlisle is 6 miles away. You had bigger churches. You had an AME Zion church there. You had a Shiloh Baptist there. You have a Catholic church there. You have another Methodist church there. And these are all Black churches.
I
And
got you.
and it was more social. The Bible school, the choir practice, Bible study. There were more people. The population was much bigger, and so people got cars, drove the 6 miles on Sunday, and so stopped going, and our church just stopped having members. And so in 1970,
let me ask you this question: is there a racial incident in your town where maybe the KKK came through, or is there anything like that? A Black person got lynched or anything, or even during civil rights, there was some civil rights battles or something?
No, there wasn't anything as drastic as no lynchings or anything like that. We did have the Confederate Army march through, and I think it was the Northern Virginia, on the way to Gettysburg, because we're also located, I would say, like 18 to 20 miles away from Gettysburg. So the Confederacy did, and the Confederacy in Carlisle did invade Carlisle, and there are buildings that have cannon chips on them, the old courthouse, and then they marched through Mount Holly, and I'm pretty sure that some merchandise was taken on their way through, if I remember correctly. And also there is a Confederate unknown soldier that was left behind and died and is buried in the other cemetery.
Oh, really? So, but that didn't turn out so good for them when they got to Gettysburg. They lost that battle.
Yes, they did. And I want to tell you the story of one of our USCT veterans. His name is Richard Jordan. Richard Jordan, and again, we were very lucky to find his obituary, says that Richard Jordan was born in Macon, Georgia, was brought to Gettysburg by his owner, who was a Confederate officer. During the battle, and it doesn't say which battle, but it just said during the Battle of Gettysburg, he escaped and found his way to Mount Holly. He joined the Union Army shortly after that in Chambersburg, which is close to us as well. He fought in the Union Army, was honorably discharged, and came back to Mount Holly Springs. He was a proud member of the GAR. He was a team master for the factory that's at the end of our street, the paper factory. He drove horses for them, and he was a member of the Mt Tabor AME Zion Church. Wow. So that's one of the stories.
So his enslaver took him to the battle. Yep. He escaped and then fought against his enslaver. Oh man, I love it.
And how did he find his way to Mount Holly? We don't know. That's another story. Was he part of the Northern Virginia? Even though he was born in Georgia, we don't know where his Confederate officer was from. Was he
Yeah.
part of Northern Virginia that marched through here? And for some reason, how did he get back?
Yeah. How far is Gettysburg from you?
About 18, 20 miles.
Okay.
So today that's an easy jaunt over to Gettysburg, but it isn't, so how did he get here?
Yeah,
And how was it because maybe somebody knew about the Underground Railroad that had previously been going on? Because by this time, the Underground Railroad in Boiling Springs had stopped because the guy had been arrested and fined, and he was no longer allowed to do that.
That's interesting. Is there a story that I have not asked you about the town or something like that? What's the museum's website, or
well, the Mt Tabor, let me give you the Mt Tabor Preservation Project website, because it has a list of stories on there. It shows a picture of the sisters. It also has their niece's story. We have a section that talks about stories. It's Mt Tabor preservation.com, and it also has a Facebook link to it.
Okay.
It also has a donation button link to it.
Okay. All right, everybody.
And that will tell you the history of the church. It will show you people. It will show you what we're doing now. It'll show you pictures of what it looked like on the day that they went in and found the time capsule, and it'll show you what it looks like right now to this day.
I got you. Is there do you all have a festival or something like that? Is that kind of in the works? Now that things are kind of clearing up, so that there'll be some particular event to come to in the city?
Yeah, there will be. We had originally thought we would have a 150-year celebration, and then COVID happened. So that's been put off, and we've decided we are now starting the restoration process. In fact, we have selected, it hasn't been announced, but we've selected the architect and engineering firm that's going to be drawing up the restoration work, and then they've been selected. We just did this today, and we're presenting it to the borough, and hopefully they'll agree, and then we'll be going out and looking for a contractor to redo the building. So when we do that, at the end, we figure we'll have the celebration, and we'll also have the celebration of this church being preserved. And we continue to do work at the cemetery. We're looking for an arch now over the gate, and we're looking for interpretive signs that just talk about the cemetery and the people that are buried there, but also the people that are buried there, and we have their names. We have, as I said, we had 16 headstones and 44 solar lights, so that's 60 bodies, right. But we only have 49 names. So we're always looking and trying to collect stories and look at death certificates. We have a whole file of death certificates.
I got you. What I guess my last question, what percentage in the town is African American and vice versa today?
I think there's like maybe 4 African Americans left in town. But there are a lot of, as I said, I think that we have a very high ratio of renters, and I don't know them, but I will tell you that, that there are a lot of biracial kids that are here. We did an assembly at the grade school right before COVID in February to talk about the Civil War veterans. And I was surprised because when I went to school, and my brothers and the kids we grew up with, we were probably the only African American in the class that we were in.
Really?
And now I would say there's like 25% are biracial.
Really?
Yeah. So I didn't realize, I don't have children, so I don't go to the school, and I don't see things. So I was surprised, and we do tours right now. Well, we didn't because of COVID, but we had 3rd graders. We had 27 3rd graders that came through, and they were very interested. They love the cemetery. Grade school kids love cemeteries. They love the church. And then the following year we were supposed to have 49, but that because of COVID, it was but we're going to be starting that up. So
Oh,
the
great.
important part is to us, the Mt Tabor Preservation Project is to educate the young, to get them interested. Because we know how we were when we were young. We didn't
Yes.
realize, when we would walk up the lane to go to Sunday school, it was because they were making us go to Sunday school, not because we could hardly wait to go to Sunday school.
Yeah,
And
sure.
past the cemetery, and it was never, the grass wasn't cut, and it was just an old cemetery. We didn't realize that there were
What was
7
there?
senior veterans
Yeah, I'm
buried there.
glad you,
We
yeah,
didn't realize that our church was like over 100 years old and
yeah,
counting. And we just didn't realize that we were living in history, that the people that
yeah,
went before us were the reason we were able to live where we were living then and even
yes,
now, because I
yes.
moved back and so many people have moved back.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, hey, I thank you so very much for telling us this story. We're going to put it in the description of the websites and the names, and every and the GoFundMe on there, and then everybody, when as they move along, and you're going through that part of the not far and that part of the, Pennsylvania, maybe stop on through, get you a tour and learn some of this good history.
Well, I also wanted to tell you
Yep,
before,
go ahead.
before
Yep.
we go, one of the things that we're happy about is the church. The address for the church was always the colored church on Cedar Street. So one of our goals was to get an address. And so we got an address and they gave us 13 Cedar Street. And one of the people on our board said, "Oh, that's an unlucky number." And I said, "No, no, no. The 13th Amendment was the emancipation
That's right.
of slaves." I said, "So they gave us 13." To me, that was a sign that we were on the right path of what
Yes,
we
I
were
love it.
supposed to be doing. So what I'll do is I'll text you the website,
Yep.
and
Yep.
so you'll
Yep.
know, and the address of the church.
Yeah, please
And
do. Please do. Everybody, this is what we do here at Strong Inspirations. I find the big stories and the little ones all over this country and even internationally so that you can know this good history, not just Black history, but American history, and then be in tune to it. And maybe as I'm always, and I know you are, you're inspired by hearing these stories of what these people do. Not just of what happened back in them days, but like people of our guests who are taking their time, they're volunteering their time so many days a week or whatever. And she can tell you how many, we ain't asking that question, to give of herself to help somebody else out. So to you, I say I thank you so very much for being on Strong Inspirations and taking time out of your schedule for sharing your story. I say with all sincerity, I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind. We love what you're doing down there and keeping that history and telling them people what really happened.
Thank
They need to
you.
know the real story, and that's what you help them provide. And so I thank
Thank
you
you.
again for being on the channel. I want to say bye-bye. We out.